Here's a close-up of the finishing machine that was used in the video. This is a very effective tool. It's certainly appropriate to the scale of the work here. It's small, it's portable, it's easy to handle, and it's actually operated by a laborer on either side turning this winch. I don't want to leave you with the impression that this is how highway pavement is placed. A typical highway job could be several miles long, and it is paved using a totally different device. It's a mechanized piece of equipment which distributes the concrete over the width of the lane. You might even pave 2 lanes at a time, and it moves the concrete horizontally across that width, and it also finishes the concrete, and it is a self-propelled machine. It doesn't look anything at all like this. I wanted to make that distinction. For the application here, this is a terrific device that does the job, but a full-blown highway project uses a totally different setup. After the finishing machine has struck off the concrete, the surface is smoothed out. This tool is called a bull float, and the mason takes out any irregularities and produces a nice smooth finish. I have to make note, and I was struck at the job site by the fact that this is a woman. I don't think in my career I have ever seen a female mason, or their appearance is so rare that I was surprised to see this lady. So it's delightful to see that the workforce is more and more integrated every year. Here the surface is being scored with a tine. This is done to create a skid-proof surface. This has to be done while the concrete is still wet or green. By the way, the term green is used to describe the concrete that has just been freshly placed. It does in fact have a green color. You're familiar with the basket that holds the dowels at the location of each construction joint. The next activity is to saw cut the concrete above the basket of dowels and actually induce a crack at that point. And this is done at frequent intervals. The goal here, of course, is to avoid random cracking of the concrete. Over the years, there have been many systems tried to incorporate some kind of a joint in the pavement. They all had many problems and affected striking off the surface of the concrete. So it was found it's simpler not to have any device cast into the concrete in advance, but instead to be able to pour the concrete monolithically and strike off the surface free of any embedded devices. That gives you a nice flat surface, and then you come along later and do the saw cutting. This appears to be superior in every respect. You can get a look here at the saw on the left. It's a diamond tip blade which very easily cuts through the concrete. You need to do this promptly. On a hot day, you can do it the same day that the concrete is placed. These workers look like they're dressed for winter. Chances are they come in and saw cut the pavement the next day. These are winter conditions. You generally don't want to place concrete when the ambient temperature is below freezing. Sometimes 40 degrees is used as a cutoff. And also in the evening, temperatures are likely to drop even further. But you can place concrete during the winter if you use various safeguards. You can keep the subbase from freezing by covering it and protecting it. And then you can also cover and protect the freshly placed concrete with insulated blankets. And that's what's being done here. To keep the project on schedule, you cannot simply shut down for the winter or even limit your activities during the winter. The goal is to try to keep the forward progress going even during the cold weather. You can provide sufficient safeguards to protect the concrete. Under the most extreme conditions where concrete absolutely must be placed, you can even construct enclosures and heat the enclosures in order to place the concrete even during the most challenging winters. But here in the New York City area, some fairly modest steps can be taken to ensure that the concrete can be safely placed and cured. From the start of construction in this area, from the very first slide to the time when all of the utilities were complete and the concrete was placed, that duration was approximately 5 months. I've mentioned pedestrian walkways or pedestrian crossings, and this is an illustration of one. Here the area of the crossing was highlighted by using colored concrete. There are other areas where granite is used, and that's even more impressive looking surface. It's a great idea to differentiate between the normal pavement and the pedestrian crossing with some architectural feature. It adds a cost to the project, but the result is permanent. You're not depending on maintaining the area with crosshatch paint or whatever is typically used. This is a very handsome approach, and it really should be considered in your project. There is certainly an added cost. Creating a separate pedestrian walkway like this is expensive. You have to interrupt the normal paving train and leave out this area. Then you come back and pour this area with several additional pours. Each different color requires a separate pour. So there's a lot of additional work, but I think the project benefits from the result, and it's a very justifiable cost. In a subtle way, I truly believe that the pedestrians appreciate this. It's not just a highway job. It's not just for the cars. It's for people also, and I certainly notice these and appreciate them. I think they're also a safety feature. It clearly designates the path for the pedestrians, and they're more likely to stay within that path if you give them their own very special space. There are several features in this photo that are worth pointing out. To begin with, the pedestrians are walking through a construction area. Their path is probably somewhat changed from what they're accustomed to, and I believe it's worth providing some additional flagman or traffic control agent as shown here, because the people are distracted by the construction. They're probably walking some unfamiliar route, and it's worth providing some additional protection, some additional signage. In addition, you can see the painted crosswalk, and you can contrast that with the previous slide, which showed the architectural feature. It's much more attractive and much more desirable. Here's another view of the pedestrians winding their way through the construction area. Because the crosswalks were replaced with these architectural crosswalks, the pedestrians had to be diverted to walk around those areas while the construction took place. This has to be very, very carefully done. You don't want the pedestrians searching for a safe pathway. You have to make it absolutely foolproof so that nobody wanders into the construction space. And that's being done here very effectively. In addition, when they cross the travel roadway, as you see, a traffic control agent was there to give them further protection. There's a bus in the background, and very often you need to shift the bus stops to accommodate the construction. Every element that impacts the public has to be carefully thought through and coordinated with the public so that everyone has advance notice. These things may seem trivial and incidental to the construction, but they are very, very important to the public and deserve a lot of care and advanced planning and notice to the impacted public.